Hello again, everyone. My name is Charles Lejano, and today it's time again for us to get real. This time about how businesses in the Philippines intend to move forward from this COVID-19 pandemic as we now enter a new set of rules to contend with, so far as how our businesses are supposed to operate. Today we are joined by none other than the head of consultancy and research of Cushman and Wakefield, Mr. Claro Cordero Jr. Good day, Claro. Kamusta?
Good day, Charles. I'm good. Yeah, excited to move to the new normal, as they say.
Yeah, we are inching our way towards that new normal. But then it's not just here in the Philippines that this phenomenon has really shook the entire global economy. This, all of the lockdowns, all of the government policies intended to stem the spread of the COVID-19 virus. What global shifts in the way we work strike you as the most kumbaga, challenging?
The main things that we will expect over the next few months, as we expect the workforce to move back to the physical office, is how ready is our offices and our buildings are in terms of receiving them back into these physical spaces. Are we sure that we have conducted the proper tests in terms of systems that need to be revisited? Have we prepared the workforce to embrace this new normal, this new norm in terms of working? I think those are the things that we can expect companies will be preoccupied with. At the same time, businesses will need to, of course, ensure that their bottom line is um, is fully covered. And we when you say bottom line being fully covered, that's a time when they will start to look at their current contracts, for example, how they um, how they can get concessions or discounts over the medium to long term, and um, how can the contracts that they've been into be more flexible um, in the long run.
What's the main thing to watch out for if you're a business owner in the Philippines?
The number one priority right now is to be able to make these spaces ready to accept the workers, the visitors in terms of the shopping malls, and that really entails more costs to them. So it entails additional capital expenditure. In terms of commercial spaces, yes, the malls have given reprieves, but the offices, I think we've heard we haven't heard a lot of office landlords given that have given a lot of concessions or discounts or even reprieve to office tenants. So and if you weigh these things, that's because essentially on one side the business is not doing good, and so um, the other side of the business is also not doing good. So you have to weigh those expectations, and I think as we go and move into going back to the physical offices, that's one thing that we need to consider. How do we strike the balance between fulfilling the obligations of the tenants, and on the other side for the landlords, how will they be able to provide some leeways for their tenants to start, so to speak, start again.
Then let's shift our focus now to the way that businesses will move forward. Essentially, in the next few weeks, with this phenomenon now of social distancing, the work from home arrangement has become quite uh, essential for businesses. What's your take on this? Has the work from home arrangement permanently scarred the conventional office space insofar as at least prospects here in the Philippines?
Well, I think it's an understatement to say that it has affected the way physical offices are built or has served its purpose. I think the work from home arrangement has shown, both from the employee side and from the companies themselves, that this type of situation can actually work. We've never seen a business in the last 2 months, those that are employing work from home arrangements. We've never seen a major business fail because of that kind of arrangement. So, as to what its effect on the physical requirement of a company to conduct business, yes, it will, in the long run, be able to influence how companies will start to rethink about the way they behave in terms of consuming physical space. So,
Mhm.
there may be, in the long run, there will be a blended type of business, conducting business. So you have those that are working from home and those that are physically in the office. But that doesn't mean that the office requirement will somehow be reduced. In the long run, people will start to think about rearranging their office and making sure that the physical offices are able to sustain the objective of keeping those people in the office safe and healthy. That's where our suggestion on how physical offices should be configured can come in. We at Cushman and Wakefield have um, studied, together with the experts in spatial planning, we've studied how physical offices should behave, or should be consumed in the long run. So you have, you need to have a certain distance from your seatmate. It can't be, it cannot be having the old kind of office density. So there's a new office density that we'll probably be able to see in the near future, and I think that will affect and influence the way office requirements will be served in the future.
Yeah, let's talk about shared office spaces. No, the concept actually became quite popular here in the Philippines sometime before all of this COVID-19 problems arose. Except now, it appears as if it is now more necessary than ever to be able to engage in this type of setup. Do you predict at some point that developers will open more shared office spaces in the near future?
In the near future, I think yes, that can be a way to sort of decongest the office, the physical office. For those companies that are not able to move out of their current offices, just to be able to conform with the government regulations and the minimum safety and health standards in terms of physical office. I think that's the way to go. They will move to shared spaces, and um, shared spaces can actually work for big corporates because you can house a particular department in one shared office, and to some corporates that can actually improve efficiency and productivity. Some of these companies would like to move their people into the shared office because, like what I said, the current office right now cannot accommodate all of them. If you look at the capacities of 50%, or to some more generous of 25% capacities, where will you put the other people in the office? And I think that's where the direction will be, especially for big offices.
What can be done in order to mitigate the damage to the relationship between the tenant and the landlord?
Open dialogue between the landlord and the tenant can actually save the day. I mean, at the end of the day, I think no landlord would like to have his or her building to be empty in the next few months, just because you know they were not responsive of the call of the business community in general for some concessions in their rents. the problem is there are some contracts and leases that are really quite restrictive, and so I think moving forward, that's one thing that us as brokers can help the companies and the landlords themselves to be able to again I'll use that word, to be able to strike a balance. And I think given how this pandemic has behaved, it's not the last that we're going to be seeing this kind of events. And so yeah, the time between now and the vaccine has, the effective vaccine has been discovered and available to the market, that will take some time. And
Mhm.
people and companies will try to and even governments, they will try to experiment on a lockdown, opening up site type of arrangement. And so I think it will be beneficial both to the landlords and the tenants to strike that balance and be more flexible in their terms.
Yeah. On the flip side, maybe pwede rin na instead of striking a balance, there can be an honest assessment between the landlord and the tenant as to whether or not this business still fits the particular requirement for the landlord and both tenant. Kasi may be better for everybody concerned, for let's say the current tenant to just move on to another place that's a better fit. At the same time, the landlord can find another tenant that may be able to now survive the current scenario. But then, be that as it may, let's talk about the shift in mindset now for the real estate investor, for example. The real estate investor who previously would prefer a nice condominium unit near office, para walking distance na lang siya from the office. But then now, with the way that everything shifted towards work from home, telecommuting, online meetings, and the online transactions, what now will happen to all of those projects, and what can developers do, real estate developers do to try to mitigate this impact? I'm sure they're scrambling right now.
Yes. I think if some of the developments can still be reconfigured. Residential developments is one example of type of development that can be easily adapted or adaptable to
Mhm.
the current situation. I think developers, landlords, and even investors of, let's say, these developments can be more imaginative in a way, so that they can still, at this point and moving forward, they can still realize some profits or some revenues out of their investments.
My question now is, will there ever really come a time when people can return to the office, quote unquote, or talaga bang ganito na yung buhay natin moving forward? And the popular answer is until a vaccine or a cure comes out, no? Whenever a vaccine or cure comes out. But then even when the vaccine or cure does hit the market, what changes become more or less permanent in the way we do business?
I think in terms of changes that will be permanent in the property market sphere is really um, how businesses will take into consideration the sanitation and the overall wellness of its employees, sanitation of the premises. I think more than ever, we are at this point where we're going to be seeing stress on, or particular stress on effective property management. And the when you say property management, it's how you configure your office or your building. Um, there should be some order now in terms of traffic flow, making sure that your um, ventilation and your air conditioning systems are working,
Mhm.
in terms of wellness and science and welfare of the employees, how the employees are doing. Um, I think that is how properties and property markets will react in the future, and that's how we will move further down the road. We need to make sure that we are compliant with the minimum safety standards set forth by the government and
Mhm.
even among industry peers. I think um, that is a permanent change that I'm seeing.
Yeah. So yeah, it's the minimum health and safety standards that we're talking about. Yeah, I'm looking at a couple of reports from Cushman and Wakefield on the future of the workplace and how to prepare for day one. Could you tell us about this interesting term that I see here? It's called total workplace ecosystem under the new normal. What are the main characteristics here, and how will everybody aim to achieve this?
Sure. Okay. So, um, yes, preparing to day one is actually moving back, maybe 2 3 weeks down the line. So a lot of the businesses, I think even if the government has lifted the quarantine conditions, they will still look at these particular items, and they need to tick on this checklist and identify whether they've done these items before they let their people go back to work. So number one priority in the list is preparing the building or the physical office, as I've been saying earlier. So ensure that the physical space, all the systems are working. It's been it has been 2 months since the air conditions have been working. So that's one point to check. Preparing the site can also mean putting up signages, and reducing touch points in the building or in the office space. Be able to, like what I said earlier, direct traffic in one direction so that interaction or crowding in the lobbies, for example, are minimized.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that's just one equation, one part of the equation. On the other side, and I think which is more relevant is to be able to prepare the workforce. How is the workforce doing? Anxiety among the workforce is probably one of the biggest um, item now that companies are looking at, because true enough, nobody knows how you'll be infected even at this environment. When you go back to your offices, to the building where you used to work, no one really knows where you will be infected or where will the next infection case will be. So you need to take off that anxiety and make sure that your company's goals are aligned and properly entrenched among your employees and workforce, so that when they go back to the office, then they are much more ready to really start working again. Because um, the reason why we want people to go back to the office is to improve efficiency and productivity.
Mm-hmm.
But as I said, there are some aspects, and there are some aspects of your business that are proven to be more effective and more efficient when you work from home, when you work outside of the office space. So that's when you tie these up together.
That's a quite the interesting point you make there, because of this work from home arrangement. The question now is how to effectively monitor uh, the personal efficiency of each employee, and I suppose it becomes a question of technological advancements. I suppose no technological upgrades that any company can make. Pero if you think about it, you actually save on traffic, you save on gas. So work from home arrangements can actually give a bigger benefit than what you can easily perceive. No? What I'm looking at though, Claro, is loss in the personal touch, the office camaraderie, the actual relationships that are fostered in the office environment. Where do you see this going in the next 6 months to maybe a year and a half? And how do you mitigate the loss of human touch, especially when it comes to such a shift in how we do business? A face-to-face meeting, at least for now, is really for special cases, I suppose, as needed. So, How do you sustain that human touch, Kev?
Well, it really is yeah, a challenging question at this point, because much as you would like to continue with that uh, with continuing with that kind of arrangement where you can foster camaraderie, and large group gatherings in your office, do a town hall to be able to drive to your own vision and mission in the companies, because I think that's really effective. But I think over the next few months, that will have to take a backseat, really. You can probably do a small group interaction, but that's not really advisable. Even how we've also um, ask offices or our clients in terms of configuring their meeting rooms, for example, we've asked them to minimize the number of people within large meeting rooms. So that means physically taking out chairs in a meeting room, so that we are sure that not a lot of people are converging in that particular space. And I think that will be the norm in the near term. Midterm, when we have a more clear indication as to how we can effectively mitigate or arm ourselves against these virus or this disease, I think that's the time that we can slowly go back to that particular normal. But um, yes, there may be some hit on productivity because there are really functions that require such close physical contacts. But um, I think it really boils down to creativity, and that's how I think leaders at this point, the leaders of these particular companies, will need to step up to ensure that their teams, will still be able to be will be productive still, even without physical contacts or close physical contacts.
Let's zoom in for a while on the real estate profession. Where do you see the real estate profession going? Nandiyan pa rin yung opportunity, I'm sure, but then all of this constitutes a major shift in the way business is done. You have the proliferation of virtual tours, and you have property management offices being restrictive. Kumbaga, they err on the side of safety. How much more difficult is it now to close a deal, real estate wise?
Challenging. I think that's if I summarize it in one word, and a lot of our colleagues, not just in the company, will agree. It's really challenging, um, and and some of these offices and some of these companies really require um, physical visit or physical contact of business. For example, in my profession as a valuer, I need to be physically in the site for me to appreciate how values have moved or behave in that particular location over time, in order for me to provide the best possible market value of the property. It is really challenging. I think who will come out to be more creative and to have more than just a physical touch, but more of being responsive of the requirements, the increase coming from your clients. I think that will define a good broker or a good appraiser, a good consultant from someone who's not.
So, before we wrap up our discussion here today, you mentioned the Create Bill as one of the things to look forward to.
Mhm.
What other items do you foresee in the next few months will actually be sources of optimism for the Philippine property sector? You think?
Yeah. Um, One particular item that I think I'm looking forward to is how corporates will respond to this pandemic. I mean, not just in the Philippines, but globally, how companies will conduct their business. We've been at the forefront of the outsourcing business.
Mm-hmm.
Even even before, way before this pandemic has happened, and now I think that is the highlight of maybe when companies come back and strategize on their operations and their plans in the future. I think that will be the highlight. The highlight will be how they will outsource those particular functions that are not within their competitive advantage. And as more corporates and companies do that and continue to outsource, then we are in a better position. The Philippine property market is in a better position to be able to service this particular demand. We have the manpower. We have a very good English fluent English population,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and we have the skills. We have the IT skills. I think what we just need to improve on is the infrastructure. That's one of the factor that has been highlighted that needs improvement for the Philippine economy. I think we need to have better infrastructure to be able to serve these outsourcing demand. As we've seen at the tail of the Asian financial crisis in 2004, 2003, how we came out of that crisis, and similarly in 2007 and 2008, that's because of the BPOs. That's because of the outsourcing business. The outsourcing business gave us so much opportunities to come out of those particular crises, and I think that will also prove to be helpful. As we realize and as we move on um, to serve these opportunities moving forward.
All right. Hopefully, those sectors do come in and save the day for the Philippine economy. But then, what word of advice can you give to our viewers who are raring to get right back on that horse and drive back their top line?
Manage the workforce, manage your people, so that um, we take out all the anxieties. It's really never easy to move back to the offices, especially at this point when you still fear about who you're gonna be with in the office, how to actually move to the office from your home, especially that public transport is still not available. And that's when companies can start to will actually be able to help their people as we move further, and as we move further into this next phase of quarantine mode.
All right, well said. And hopefully, tuloy-tuloy na to, no? Towards that road to recovery. Thanks for your time. Once again, that was Cushman and Wakefield's Mr. Claro Cordero Jr. Maraming salamat, Senor, for all of your wonderful insights. And you please, for all of our viewers, be sure to check out these reports that we keep mentioning here in our interview. They can be downloaded from the Cushman and Wakefield website on how to prepare for day one and what the future of work looks like. Once again, we were given this opportunity to get real and discuss the real ins and outs of the Philippine property sector. But then at this point, we cannot stress enough that it's not just the physical space, as Mr. Claro Cordero said. It is definitely going to boil down to how we treat the people in the company, being the lifeblood of any business. So ideally, hopefully, things get better for everybody over the next few weeks. Once again, this has been Charles Lejano for Let's Get Real, and we hope to see you next time.